Right, thank you for being here today. My name's David Sanderson. I'm head of Sky AdSmart Local and Development. This is Lisa Webb, who is the regional manager for this part of the country. I'm going to start with a statement, and it's this, which is that if you're like any other of the businesses that we talk to, or you either run the businesses or you're working on behalf of them, other businesses that we talk to around the country, then you probably have the similar frustrations, which is that it's hard to level the playing field when you're competing against national brands in marketing terms. And against that backdrop, if any of that is true to a degree, then wouldn't it be great if you could deliver your client's message, your own message, with all the power and impact of television, with the absolute certainty that the right people are going to see it, with the absolute certainty that they won't see it more than a set number of times, and that you're delivering it with, as I say, maximum impact in their primary viewing space in the comfort of their own home on their main TV. I don't know if I can move this without wrecking the connections, but I might just try that. Let me just take you through this, because that is exactly what AdSmart does, and an awful lot more. So let me just kick off with a few already out-of-date claims about where we've got with this project. So we've already delivered campaigns from well over 400 advertisers. This is already out of date. Well over 1,000 campaigns, almost 1 billion impressions. But this figure is still the same. Over three quarters of all the advertisers using Sky AdSmart are new to television or new to Sky. About 25% of them are new to television per se. And that's exciting. And the reason that figure is going up is that up until now, television has, for the most part, been too big, too expensive, too clumsy a medium for most businesses that have, for lots of good reason, a need to target precise geography and niche audiences, or both. We've won some awards, the most significant of which is this one, the Innovation of the Year at the Media Week Awards last year, and it's kind of a good job we did. We spent £100 million on this project, and it took 8 years. So if we hadn't won it, it would have been a bit disappointing. But we did, thankfully. And I just want to kick off with a brief film. This is the tail end of a testimonial film that features a number of people. The most significant ones are Paul Hendy, who runs a quarter of a billion pound turnover car dealer group on the South Coast. And then you'll also hear from the digital marketing director at Countrywide PLC, which is the biggest group of estate agents in the country. There's a few other heads that pop up that are explained earlier in the film that are from ad agencies in London. But what these two people say is really significant.
It was the month of September, so in our business, that's one of the busiest months of the year. We increased our sales of Fiesta by 50%. Nationally, Fiesta sales during that period increased by 25%, so we've more than doubled the national improvement. Of the 221 Fiestas that we did sell, 101 of those were from a Sky AdSmart box.
The results of Sky AdSmart have been fantastic for us. We've seen well over 600% return on investment. And in a market that during that period of the year, between October and November, we'd traditionally see a decline towards the Christmas period. And normally we'd expect to see around 10%, and indeed that's what our control brands showed. For the areas that we were running the Sky AdSmart campaign, we saw a 1% increase, so a net 11% gain directly as a result of the Sky AdSmart campaign we ran.
It was effective on a number of levels, not only the vehicles that we sold, but just the sheer energy it created within the sales team. They could say to their friends or family, we're on Sky TV, we're advertising, look what the company's doing, this is fantastic. It was a real energy driver, got everybody really up for it.
It comes down to being able to target particular brands in particular geographic areas very tightly and focus it on customers who are likely to engage with us. There's no point us targeting someone that isn't a homeowner. Clearly, we're trying to get them to sell their property through us. So to be able to pick customers and focus that targeting very closely is what's important to us.
For this new campaign which we're running at the moment, we actually went a stage further. So we took the Sky data and we took our client data and we overlaid them. So it's quite exciting for the client. They thought it was, really innovative.
The results from the Audi campaign were really positive. We were really pleased. The fact that the audience that we were targeting were more than twice as likely to be in the market for a premium car in the next 12 months. So we felt that the Sky AdSmart technology had really come into its own.
I think the really exciting thing about the future of Sky AdSmart is that we've already proved to date that we can grow the TV market. More than a quarter of brands are new to TV brands, which is really, really encouraging, and the whole purpose for Sky AdSmart.
Very exciting when a technology like Sky AdSmart comes along.
We've already used Sky AdSmart a second time, and we've got another campaign with Sky AdSmart booked for September of this year.
Absolutely, I would recommend Sky AdSmart, not to our competitors of course, but it's been very beneficial for us, and yeah, I definitely recommend it.
So the purpose of showing you that is there, with particular reference to Paul Hendy and Alex from Countrywide. Those are two people who've commissioned real campaigns with real money and got real results, and they're talking about it in their own words, which is great for us. I should point out, you can tell by the fact that Paul Hendy was talking about booking a campaign in September that that's slightly out of date. He's since booked 5 more for this year, which is great. Now, we often in television companies, not least Sky, forget to talk about the power of TV. And it's particularly relevant in the regional ad markets where it's not, for lots of good reason, not properly been considered before. So it's worth reminding ourselves that people watch TV for an average of 4 hours a day, by far and away the biggest leisure pursuit in the country. Thousands of brands use TV, and of those thousands, hundreds have used it every year for 50 years because it works. It's an important part of what they do. Lots of reports on ROI, which you'd expect it to have, but I think the bit at the bottom is the bit that stands out here, that if you can find a cost-effective way to get your brand or your client's brands on TV, then everything else you do will work better. Your press, your radio, your web will work better. Now, that either means you need to spend less on it, or you can just get better results. The way that AdSmart works, or the way that Sky is able to deliver Sky AdSmart, is unique. There's some components to this little ecosystem that only we have and only we will have. So we've got scale. We've got 11 million customers. Each of them spends about £600 a year with us, so that's over 6 billion. We've got our own channels, which people like Virgin do not have. They don't have any channels anymore. We work for Sky Media, so it's our job to monetize Sky's media assets, and we work closely with Sky IQ, and you'll understand what they do in a minute, but they are the people who've taken approximately 21 billion bits of information and plonked them on the memory chips on the subscriber cards in those 11 million households. So we now know an awful lot about our customers. This is just a very quick timeline. There's 2 things to take from this. 1998 was roughly when the web really started to innovate, and in that time, TV advertising hasn't really changed. In fact, it hasn't really changed since 1955. You buy a spot, you hope someone sees it, and they do or they don't. It just happens to happen on a great wider number of channels now than it did back then. But since '98, there's been a load of innovation in TV, and a lot of it's been driven by Sky. Most of these big projects have been copied by pretty much every pay TV platform around the world. And the point of showing you that is that AdSmart is a massive project, but it's not the first massive project that Sky has done, and therefore it's not surprising that it launched late 2013 without a hitch and has been hitch-free ever since. But this is a revolution. This is the first time that anyone in this country has been able to use television to target in the same way as they can use the web. Now, this is a fun chart as well. It's saying this is the size of the bet that we're placing that your customers will watch our content. £2.7 billion a year. Actually, that figure's going to go up massively because we've just committed to £1.4 billion a year for football. About half of that was football or sport generally. So that's kind of an important figure. And what we're saying is that whoever your clients and your customers are, they will find something in that program repertoire that they like. And if they do, they'll see your message. And if they don't, you don't pay for them. You've got to accept that to see local advertising in national or internationally syndicated content like that would stand out. And we've got lots of anecdotal evidence to say that that does happen, and people are sort of a bit of a double take where they've seen their local car dealer or a local airport advertising and stuff like that. So we are effectively growing the TV market. All of a sudden it's more relevant to more people, which is fun. And disrupting it insofar as a regional or local advertiser, your choices are sort of limited to press, radio, posters, door drop, etc., etc. All the usual media channels that come with their own problems in terms of wastage and perhaps lack of impact. So the fact that we're kind of shaking it up a bit is fun. And when we talk to clients directly about this, what they tend to fairly quickly grasp is that this is direct marketing on television. This is picking and choosing exactly the households you want to deliver your message to and making sure that they see it. And in that sense, it's incredibly complementary to any online activity, which is, by definition, equally targeted. And what advertisers tell us is that what they are doing is reconsidering budgets that are being committed to regional press and radio and redeploying it into Sky AdSmart. That's where the budgets seem to be coming from. And I think it's important to understand why that's happening. What we've got here for the first time in a proper regional local sense, and we'll talk about geography in a minute because this is a really unusual area given the sort of massive range of Anglia TV geographically, is to talk about what we mean by the power of TV. And when we talk to car dealers who sell cars, they're thinking about how can I sell cars to Sky customers, and we kind of redirect them along that thought pattern to say, no, this isn't about selling cars. This is about selling an idea of what you're going to do with an hour this Saturday. Why should you visit a car dealer? Is it a nice place? Are there smiley faces? And that power is something that press, radio, etc. cannot do. All of your clients have a really good understanding of who their customers are, and to date, you would have had an in-depth conversation with our esteemed colleagues at ITV and that have gone, fascinating. Your target audience is ABC One this or 16 to 24 that. You can have one of about 16 different linear audiences. In this world, as you'll see, it's very, very different because we know more about our customers than we ever could. You heard Paul Hendy talk about this case study, selling little red Ford Fiestas called Fiesta Flames, where they doubled the national average, which is a stunning result. They've just had, in fact, the sales director of Hendy is on stage at a digital conference in Birmingham as we speak, talking about the fact that they just had their best ever January. And for the oldest Ford dealer in the country to say that, that's quite a big deal. East Coast Trains, really measurable, quite a boring advertiser, but really measurable. Online ticket sales, you know, you can't go wrong on the clarifying the numbers on that. And if we got a 5 or maybe a 10% uplift on the back of that campaign, we would have been delighted, but they were because it was up 26. And then this, we've done a bit of, this is why it should be interesting. Let me just tell you what it is now, and we can move into a phase where if you can understand how it works, you'll quickly understand how it works for you. So this is just 2 minutes that begins to introduce that idea.
Watching TV is the nation's #1 pastime. So it's no wonder that television advertising has such power and impact. And now we've turned it into a whole new ballgame. Welcome to Sky AdSmart. Advertisers looking for specific audiences, but using a mass medium, can now combine the unrivaled power of TV, our in-depth knowledge of Sky households, advertisers' own consumer insights, and Sky's new targeting technology. Sky AdSmart enhances the power of TV, giving you greater control over who is seeing which commercial, in which location, and how many times they see it. You choose your specific audience from our wide selection, agree the campaign terms, and let Sky AdSmart do the rest. So now you're free to use TV in an entirely new way. You could show Brummies the city version, or focus on mummies with the baby version, or mix and match your audiences and show yummy Brummy mummies the luxury version. To make all this possible, we've effectively turned Sky Plus HD boxes into dynamic ad servers, which can place spots seamlessly into ad breaks when households match the selected audience attributes. Not only very clever, but very simple too. With our advanced data, it'll be easy to track campaign performance and report the results in the detail you need. There are many ways to use Sky AdSmart. Select the exact buying audience you need. Advertise only in cities. Take greater control over frequency. Show your creative work in an exact order. Play different messages to different viewers. Show your ads more often to your core audience. Sky AdSmart, the power of TV enhanced. Sky, believe in better.
Right, let me just take that a little bit further and just give you an example using just some basic illustrations to simulate what happens in two households watching the same content at the same time. So just imagine that this household with the dad with the young child is in Norwich, and that this household with the young professionals is in Southampton, and that they're both going to be watching the same content. The ads, there's no need to be connected here. All of the advertising copy is sent over the satellite, delivered directly to the relevant boxes by satellite. So all those ads are sent off overnight usually, and they land in the respective boxes. And in this case, the Lego ad is going to sit in the box at the top, along with some other advertisers that are after that household and households like it. And the Hendy Ford ad is going to sit in the household at the bottom with a lot of other ads. And in this example, they're both watching Game of Thrones. I should point out that the Lego ad was aimed at dads, not kids. Who essentially, it's very rarely the kids who buy Lego, in case you're wondering why a 6-year-old is watching Game of Thrones. And we get to a commercial break, and the first ad in break in this example is one from Tesco. And then we get to the end of that, and the box says, right, there's some opportunities to serve some AdSmart content, to create what we call an AdSmart event. So we sent a hint code to the boxes saying, okay, we're going to pick the ads that are relevant to the household, that are higher priority than any other ad in the box based on how far they are from the end of their campaign date, how far away they are from hitting their impressions target, how much they're paying relative to others. This instant prioritization engine says, in the case of the household at the top, that they should see a Lego ad and that the household in Southampton should see an ad from their local Ford dealer. They're both playing out seamlessly over a linear ad that would otherwise have been seen. So that might have been NatWest or McDonald's going out nationally behind it, who knows. But to make sure we understand what's gone on, we have a panel of 500,000 households that we call the Sky Expanded Viewing Panel that captures pretty much exactly what's happening. Now, if you remember at the beginning, we said we've got 7 million Sky Plus boxes. So we are measuring in real time every button press. All these houses are connected and delivering viewing activity down the return path in 1 in 14 homes. Now, as a ratio, that is incredible. Barb, the organisation that creates television ratings for conventional linear TV, has 5,100 homes measuring what's going on in 25 million. So this is extraordinarily accurate. And this figure is going to go up. It's going to get to 1 in 10, 1 in 5 over time. And it does a number of things. It tells us what ads were seen and what ads were not seen. So any linear ad that wasn't seen is effectively credited back in our general dealings between Sky Media and that advertiser. We knock one off in the case of the example you've just seen, the totals we promised to deliver Lego and Hendy. But it also tells us some other stuff. It tells us, is anyone there? And therefore, can we charge for the ad? So, as we'll explain in a minute, you have to watch at least 3/4 of the ad, and we've got to know that there's some viable evidence to suggest that we're not just playing an ad to either a screen that's turned off or to an empty room. How do we know that? Well, every channel has a known level of interactivity. It varies. There is a lot less interactivity on Sky Movies when you lean back and relax for an hour and a half as there is with Sky News, where you're flipping around maybe every, frequently because of just the nature of the content. In a conventional entertainment channel, if you haven't pressed the remote control within half an hour, we assume you're not there. So if the ad's been played, the first thing it then does is to check back to see if there's been an appropriate level of activity to then charge that impression. And if it isn't, we assume that either you've turned the TV off but left the box on, you've fallen asleep, you've run out of the room, whatever it is, you're just not there. So that's an important piece. We also know that the program environment in which the ad is playing is right for the person in that household that you're after. We can only confirm that the impression has been delivered into a household, but if you're after the father rather than the teenager or the other way around, the program environment in which it plays shapes whether that ad goes out or not. So, the exciting bit is how we can target. And again, the contrast here is those fun chats you have with Anglia, where you have endless discussions about how targeted you want to be, and then they say, well, you're one of these 16. We can target in 5 different ways: lifestyle, finance, location, composition, and then we can create some custom segments. And in a bit of detail, what that means is using Experian's Mosaic lifestyle product, which we'll talk about in a minute, whether or not they've got a phone contract, how many cars they've got, certainly relevant to one of the ads we've just seen, whether they've got pets and what pet it is, well, dog or a cat as far as we go. What their fashion orientation is, which is quite fun, not just for fashion retailers, but if you think about some of the car ads that are on at the minute for compact cars, they're very fashion oriented, much more of a fashion statement about a Fiat 500 than it's 0 to 60. Newspaper readership, finance, the Experian's financial strategy product looks at people's assets, financial assets, but also their attitude to risk, which is hugely interesting to people trying to sell product on credit, for example. Levels of affluence, whether they own a home or not. If you're in anything to do with home improvement, you really don't want to be selling your idea to someone who doesn't own their home. Mobile phone bill, car insurance in terms of when's it due, and then geography and household composition is also fascinating, and we'll touch on the importance of senior decision makers within that in a moment. And I'll come back to custom segments, which I'll keep teasing you about till we get there. So Mosaic Lifestyle, I don't know if you use Experian data. If you don't, it's fantastically intuitive. Experian, biggest data company of its type in the world in 70 countries. As I mentioned, 21 billion bits of data on the UK population. And what Mosaic does is look at essentially postcode, council tax bill, type of house, and then just make some extrapolations about who you are based on that stuff. We all fall into one of those 15 groups, and there's lots of data that supports this, but alpha territory are business owners, bankers, senior managers, liberal opinions, tend to work in journalism, politics, media, advertising. So interesting and reasonably intuitive, but lots of data that sits behind that. The fashion stuff, I'm obviously a brand boy. Actually, I'm not. I'm probably low cost and long lasting, but this is kind of stuff that is useful, and certainly for retailers, and I know that there's some retail clients represented here today that is really fascinating stuff. And I'm skating over the surface here. The depth of information we've got here is immense, and it's kind of fun digging into it, but it's so precise that you can almost not get too far into it in a circumstance like this. Household composition, I think really interesting for attractions. We saw the zoo. You only want to talk to families with kids of a certain age to do that sort of thing, probably. But equally interesting to people selling vehicles that are good for families. You want to talk to them where they've got kids, or where they've just had a kid, which is also significant. Numbers of cars and the proximity of their next insurance renewal date. Some of these get a bit constrained when we look at it on a micro geography level. We have some minimums that we have, minimum budgets of £3,000, minimum household segment, as we call it, of 5,000 households. If you start looking at households in the NR postcode that are renewing in the next month, we won't have enough, but we might have the next third of a year, which is still pretty cool. Affluence, we all of us in this room, fall into one of those 7 bands of affluence. It's a national scale that looks at income, net debt, including mortgage, and it positions us on that Richter scale. So in this part of the country, as the rest of the sort of southeast is on average far more this end of the scale than it is the other if you're in the northeast or in Scotland. But this is really great. Of our 7 million households, 477,000 of them are home to people who own or are a director of a company. And that company can either have 50 or more, or 50 or less staff. Obviously, there's a lot more smaller companies than there are large ones. But it's great if you're in the market for selling outsourcing services, fleet car purchases, whatever it might be. This is a really difficult audience to reach. It's not a cheap audience to reach even in this format, but at least we can identify them and guarantee that they will see your message. Home ownership, pretty obvious, but estate agents are falling all over themselves for this one, but so too, windows, doors, conservatories, renewable energy, domestic heating, and so it goes on. Pet ownership, surprisingly popular attribute, this one. It surprised me how many people are looking to use it, but we can't tell you what papers the pets own, but we can draw some correlation. Now this is a purposely busy chart. So this is as far away we are from 16 linear audiences. Hundreds and hundreds of different attributes. And as you pick and choose your attributes, and you can combine any number of these in which any way you want, you've got infinite choice to create your segment. That's what we call a segment is. If you have 2 of those, 1 of those, and 3 of those, that's your segment. And what we'll tell you is how many households fall into those combined attributes. And it can be either attribute 1 and attribute 2 and attribute 3, or it can be all attribute. So you create either a Venn diagram, or you're just looking at the bit where people overlap, or you're looking at the combination of the whole. And now geography, pretty key, particularly when you look at the shape of that region. It's massive. And the difficulty with ITV regions, and like everyone in Sky, I worked at ITV once in my career, is that this map is shaped not by where people live and where roads go and where economic centres are. It's about VHF signals and antennas and hills. The only one that really makes any economic sense is London, because the rest of them are just either too big or too small or the wrong shape to properly reflect the way business is done in this country. And to reflect that, we launched some conurbations at the end of 2013, beginning of 2014, that looked at the top 16. So these are the top 16 economic centres in the UK. And what we were trying to get to, which we've already launched, which is where all the excitement about AdSmart is coming, is this. The UK is divided up into 124 area postcodes, and now you can pick and choose any combination of that. The question that prompts is, well, why can't I do a district postcode as well, i.e. NR1? And the answer to that is there's 3,000 district postcodes. There's too much data. We can't do that. But you can use Mosaic in a way to zero into bits of a postcode. The only one we subdivide is this one, because our dear friends in Ulster could never agree on what someone else's postcode should be called. So they're all BT, and it's massive. So we do chop that one up a bit. This is a terrible resolution. London, even the Evening Standard can't subdivide London, and we can. So that's fun in that market. But for this part of the country, you can pick geography that fits far better, and then zero in on the households within it in whichever way you wish. And then lastly, custom segments. This is trialing at the moment. It's pretty high ticket item, to be honest. All it's saying is, as this graph so simply, or this chart so simply puts it, is we've got loads of customers. Your clients have got loads of customers, and some of them will be common to both of us. And where that's the case, we can isolate them. And that's either anonymize a data set, which Sky IQ do for us, and where they're common to both, they see the client's ad, or acquire a data list that you're, a list of conquests or prospects that you're after, or lapsed customers that you're trying to get back, whatever it might be, and we can target them. It's a different price, that is gold dust, and it comes with an appropriate price point. But you can imagine if you are direct line and you know that of your existing customer base, 11/12 of them are not renewing their insurance this month, just talk to the 1/12 that does. So the product we're keen to engage anyone who wants to explore it is this one, Define and Reach, which is titled because that's what it does. We will define some geography with you that works for your brand or business. We'll define the audience with you, and that's a mutual learning curve through Experian to determine what's the best fit. And then it's a case of, well, how many times do we need that ad to be seen? And that varies. We can cap this at a maximum. We set a range in each box, so if we're trying to deliver an average of, let's say, 5, we will set a range of between 3 and 8. So as soon as it hits 8 in any heavy viewing household, it stops playing. And that effectively, the normal curve of television is huge levels of cover amongst low-income, high-viewing households in an attempt to reach affluent, light viewers who are difficult to reach. And after a period of time, you hit a point of diminishing marginal returns where it's really not worth spending any more money because you're reaching the same people over and over again. This automatically flattens that curve and pushes your budget towards those light viewers, because once the heavy viewers have had their allocated delivery, it stops playing. These are the channels that we can deliver or create AdSmart events on. All of the Sky wholly owned channels. It says HD, but it's all of them. It excludes Sky News, and it excludes live sport within Sky Sports. The reason for that is we have to know when the break pattern, the break is to 100th of a second, otherwise this doesn't work. In Sky News, stuff happens, breaks change, so that'll never change. In Sky Sports, we know when some of the breaks are, kick-off breaks in football, green lights in Grand Prix, but the rest we kind of don't. So only 20% of the minutage in Sky Sports is live output, albeit a big chunk of the audience, but the minutage, it's a small proportion. So the rest of the stuff we can create AdSmart events in. And then you'll see there's some third-party channels that have made the investment to enable them to take a share of our AdSmart inventory, and there'll be more to follow, Discovery, Viacom, organisations like that. So the reach will become greater. This is about a third of all commercial viewing in most Sky homes. The fact that it's a third of viewing normally would matter. Share of viewings in linear TV matters. That's why ITV do well. The chances are you will see an ad on ITV if you put it out there for long enough. In this world, it doesn't. It doesn't matter whether I love these channels and I spend half my time watching them, and Lisa doesn't, and she only spends 5% of her time watching them. When she spends her 5% of her time watching these channels, she's going to see a lot more local targeted ads as a proportion of the total ads she sees, whereas mine will be amongst a wider range of national ads as well. In terms of how do we measure, you've got to see 3/4 of the ad for it to be chargeable, so 74% or less is free. We don't charge for anything post-midnight, so any risk that the set might be off, we diffuse as a concern by saying, look, there's going to be people watching, but we're not going to charge for it anyway. We've talked about the 500,000 panel that measures all this, and it's traded in a way that is much more familiar to local and regional businesses who are actively buying PPC campaigns, which is all on cost per impression. In terms of where we are now, this is all focused on direct-to-home, main screen satellite service, but it's all about to get even more exciting because out-of-home viewing is becoming increasingly important, and if you are a Sky customer, you will enjoy the fact that wherever you are, your subscription goes with you. You can watch your content on your phone and your iPad. And that is increasingly important. We deliver 1 billion streams of content every year, 240 million impressions every month, and at the moment that comes unencumbered with any local advertising, but the local ads will follow the device. And also on demand, which is, again, a massive change in the Sky business model, where people look at the huge range of channels and then look at what they've recorded in their planner and still think they'd rather look at what's in the catch-up TV service, and where they're downloading box sets like Mad Men that they want to watch from the Sky library, then that will come encumbered with local advertising when they choose to watch it. Almost 20 million downloads a month currently. So we're here, we're in position one. So this is where we're focused, delivering lots of clever stuff in the living room, but it's all about to change in the course of this next calendar year. So it is the power of TV enhanced, and I'm really grateful to John and Francesco at JMS for putting this together. It's a great initiative. We really want to do as much as we can in East Anglia, and whether you, as I said at the beginning, whether you do that directly with us, whether you do it through a local intermediary, it really makes no difference to us. We just want to make sure that everyone is aware of the opportunity and we can do as much business as possible.